Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Real-time problem in Kailua with this vessel. That's all the testimony we have received on this measure. Members, any questions of our testifiers? Vice Chair Bronco.
As Mrs. Pinda had mentioned, this is a big concern in our community and has been something that my office, as well as several members from the Windward delegation, have been dealing with. And so I have a few questions for Mr. Underwood. I request just patience as we go through. It's been a little difficult for us in our community to figure out what to do with this. We have been told that the trailer is the jurisdiction of the city and county. However, the boat is the jurisdiction of the DLNR. There hasn't been a real clear path on how to get this removed. So let me go ahead with my questioning for Mr. Underwood. Can we require the last registered owners of an abandoned vessel to be responsible for disposing of the vessel or to pay the fees for removing the vessel?
Well, what we can do is we have the HA number of the boat now, and we're looking up who is the last known registered owner, and they are responsible for removing the vessel. If they don't do that, they could be responsible for the fees, but there's no mechanism in law to require that. Possibly, yes, they are ultimately responsible for removing the boat.
Thank you. Is it illegal to abandon a vessel? And if so, what are the consequences for the registered boat owner?
Currently, there is no law that makes it illegal for abandoning a boat. However, this measure will make it a criminal offense. That's one of the reasons we're asking for it. Because what we find is when the boats we deal with, we end up paying an inordinate amount of money to remove these vessels. Just last week, we had to tow an 80-foot wooden Chinese junk from the Alawai Harbor to the Ke'i Harbor because it was taking on so much water, and it cost $35,000 just to bring it to the harbor. We know the owner has no money, so we will not receive any reimbursement from the owner. However, if it was made criminal, it would be more of a motivation for them to deal with their property.
For the costs related to removing such a vessel, is there any cost sharing measures with the city and county of Honolulu?
No, there is not. And this goes back to 2012 when we asked to have the statute amended, because what was happening is all abandoned boats in the state of Hawaii were coming through our division. And what it boils down to is a funding issue. We just didn't have the funds to deal with all these boats. So the law was amended to say wherever the boat happens to be sitting, it's that entity's jurisdiction to deal with it. So right now, the city and county of Honolulu, we met with them 2 weeks ago to discuss this, and they said they don't have enough land storage space to put a boat and trailer. So we reached out to our land division. They said they don't have land at this time. But the city was also asking about Kalaeloa, if there's maybe a space there, but that's not under our area of jurisdiction. So I don't know if there might be some vacant ag land that could be used to store. But I mean, we're willing, like on this particular boat that's in front of the school, we are willing to work with the county. We could probably make some space down here at the Ke'i Small Boat Harbor to put it while they go through their process of disposing of the boat.
Is there a possibility for you folks to store the boat and to charge the city and county for the storage of the said vessel?
We could, for this particular one, I don't believe it's necessary to charge them. We could put it here while they dispose of it, but we don't have the space at the small boat harbors to store all these boats on Oahu. We just don't have the space. The space we were using for years in KE, that went back to the Department of Transportation Harbors Division. So we're very limited now in space down here.
What is the process for DLNR for removing vessels abandoned on city or state property? So if say if a citizen wanted to notify, what is the process?
So the way we do boats here in the small boat harbors and within our other related facilities like the launch ramp areas, we'll post the boat that it's abandoned. We give the proper amount of time according to the statute. And then at that point, we will have the boat removed, and that entails hiring a contractor to come in. If it's on land, we would hire like a tow company that has a flatbed truck to pull it up on. Then we have to bring it to our facility to hold on to it, and then we run it through the disposal process.
What is the DLNR's total budget for boat removal?
We have, well, I should say we have money remaining. There's some money for marine debris mitigation that we've used. That was a lump sum given some years ago. But as far as on an ongoing basis, we have no funding mechanism. We use the boating special fund, which is comprised of the fees that are paid by all the boaters in the state. So it has to come out of that fund.
Last question. From my understanding, it seems like there's a miscoordination between DLNR and the city and county for removing these vessels. How can we fix this so that derelict vessels are not left on our state or city and county properties?
Well, as we said, as it stands now in the statute, it's the city's responsibility to remove the trailer, regardless if there's a boat on it or if there's a refrigerator on it, whatever may be on it. It would be the city's responsibility to dispose of it. However, we have talked about moving forward. If there's a way that we could fund a vessel removal program, we have said that we would take the lead on that. I have not talked to my chairperson for this, but we have had discussions on this where if the funding was there, we could have one entity in charge of removing these boats. And we would be willing to do that. It's just that we really need that funding source. And we've come before the legislature for several years, and we've asked to create a special fund for marine debris and vessel removal, but the legislature hasn't supported any new special funds. So we're looking at maybe a way to do it would be to just have an appropriation each year of $500,000 to $1 million. And then we would work through that. And if we needed more, we'd come back at the next legislative session to ask for more funding. I think in the long run, that would be the best way to deal with it. And as it stands today, though, it's like each agency's on their own, and you just got to do your best to get rid of the boats.
Chair, if I may, one more question.
One more question, certainly.
Thank you. Also, in the case for the Kailua boat, as you said in there was that case that you had to tow the boat, there was no money. For the case in Hawaii, in Kailua, there is a homeowner that actually owns a home. Is there any way to tie that to their home or in any way?
We would have to work through our deputy AGs to see if that's possible. A lot of times what happens is when we want to go after the cost of removing these boats, the first thing we're asked is, does this person have assets? Because if they're going to spend the time to get a judgment and then the person doesn't have any money, then it's just not worth doing it. But in this case, if they own a home and they're the last known registered owner, that may be a motivation for them to deal with this boat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I appreciate this is a very important issue in the district, and wanted to give you the latitude for those questions. Thank you, members, for your forbearance. Other questions? Representative Kobayashi.
For DLNR, Section 3 of the bill has language about abandoned vessels in waters of the state on any property other than the property of the vessel owner, on public property, and on private property. I think that opens up DLNR to too much responsibility. I mean, a vessel parked, as was just discussed, on land, whether it's on public property, street side, or private property, all becomes your responsibility. Are you comfortable with accepting all of that responsibility?
No, not at this time without the adequate funding, but I believe further into the bill, I'd have to read it back real quick. It does clarify that if whoever's jurisdiction it happens to be under would have the responsibility for removing the boat. And
Okay,
that would be on page 9C3. And just to give you an example, there's several derelict Hobie cats and outrigger canoes that were stored on land up in Kailua Beach area. And it turned out those lands are accreted land, so they're owned by the homeowner. So the homeowner has actually taken responsibility for removing those boats according to the statute.
thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, members?